I will invite Farzana Meru, AKEB board member.
Thank you, Jalal. Yalimida, everybody. It's great to see so many of you here for this webinar. We're really very excited. And what I want to do is to just start by giving you a little bit of an idea as to why we on the education board are putting some emphasis on the STEM side of things. So, as part of our work on the education board, we've been doing a lot of sort of background work on trying to understand the skills that are going to be really important in the world of work in the future. And by the future, I'm talking about sort of 10, 20 years down the line. And what we've been doing is to look at expert reports to try and figure this out. And what is extremely clear from these reports is that there are certain skills that are going to be incredibly important. And these are things like critical thinking skills, analytical skills, problem-solving skills, research skills, and technological skills is going to be a huge part of the future world of work. In fact, we're already seeing signs that it is important right now. And many of these skills really can be developed by starting to get exposure to STEM activities. And that is why we put a lot of emphasis on the STEM activities that we do on the board. We can see even now, actually, even during this coronavirus period, that actually there's a huge dependence on these kind of skills. You know, we're hugely reliant on technology. We're trying to develop, as a worldwide population, we're trying to develop vaccines. We're developing new structures and technological advances to really help with the current situation. And so for us to really sort of give our children a bit of a leg up in the future, what we really want to do is get them exposed to STEM subjects from a young age, to spark that interest, to really get them to think about how they might actually develop solutions in the future, whether or not they directly go into one of the STEM subjects that they're studying at school, for example, or not, but just so that they can actually use those skills that they develop to actually make a difference and help them have a leg up in the working world in the future. So with that, I think I will stop right there, because we've got a couple of wonderful panelists that I think Jalal is going to introduce, and they'll take us through the session today. Towards the end, I'll also give you an idea about what the education board are doing in terms of the activities during this COVID-19 period. So over to you, Jalal. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Farzana, for your lovely, thoughtful, and inspirational insight here. Let's move on to introducing the panelists. So our first panelist is Jenna Megan. She has actually studied, her education is in early childhood education from Canada. And she has, as you can see, over 10 plus years of experience in teaching, particularly in early years. Our next panelist it comes with a wealth of experience, 17 plus years in different primary settings. And particularly what is key to see here is that she's got a lot of experience, or she's a specialist in STEM and educational inclusion specialist. So with that background, or with that introduction, I pass it on to Tasneem to take it over.
Thank you very much, Jalal. Thank you very much. So let's get started. I'm so happy that there are so many of you that have joined us today, because STEM is such an exciting area of learning, and there are so many reasons why children should be encouraged and supported to learn in these areas. So what is STEM? STEM stands for Science, Technology, Engineering and Math. And these are distinct subjects in themselves, which you all know, but it's not just about studying each subject separately, but as I've said here on the slide, about introducing knowledge through real world application and examples. So bringing all of the skills that these subjects teach to be able to solve problems and think in a certain way, which Farzana referred to at the start. Jalal, next slide, please. So why is STEM learning so important? STEM develops very vital skills, which include critical thinking, problem solving. Do excuse me, but I will refer to my notes because there is so much good information I want to share with you. Numerical analysis, mathematical reasoning, design, and a grasp of the scientific method. All of these are really, really vitally important skills. And as children go through their education, they are a fundamental part of education, which is great for them to be able to develop. STEM subjects drive change, and it is logical then that these are the leaders of the future. We've all seen change in technology over the last 30 years. The rate of change has been extremely rapid. From when I was a young girl to now, we've seen so many different changes, from the introduction of email for the first time. You know, phones used to be big chunky bricks when I was little, and now they're so, you know, tiny little slick things. This rate of change is going to continue for the next 30 years, and by giving our children an introduction into these areas, we're setting them up really well for the future. There will be a high demand for a workforce trained in STEM subjects. Because there is such a growth in this area, then there will be a high demand for the workforce. And also, there is a shortage of recruitment shortage for people joining these areas. So there are lots of jobs available in these areas, and that's going to continue to grow in the future. Because graduates of STEM subjects have such critical skills, they're highly valued by employers in other industries as well. So not just science and engineering and technology, but in any other industries, journalism, anything else. These graduates are highly sought after and highly employable. So even if they don't continue to take these subjects on at university or afterwards, the skills that they gain are priceless. Last of all, there's a shortage of females and minority ethnic groups in these areas. I read the Academy of Engineering's report yesterday when I was preparing for this, and they're stating that only 8% of the UK engineering force are women. So you can see from that there is a big shortage, and there are many reasons for that shortage. But as we all know, girls are just as capable as boys and can do any of these jobs. So if they are interested in them, we should encourage their interest and allow them to, you know, take that interest forward. And minority ethnic groups, only 6% make up the engineering workforce. So again, there's many reasons for that, but if your child's interested, then please encourage them and support them. Okay, so don't worry then, STEM at primary level is really good fun. It's none of the kind of academic things that you think of when you think of STEM subjects. It's really fun, and it's just creating a spark and allowing children to explore. You don't have to be an expert yourself. Parents might be worried that, well, I've never studied science, or I don't know much about technology. How do I support my child? You don't have to be an expert at all. You can learn with your child. When the new curriculum came out in 2014, coding became part of that new curriculum. And just like parents are doing currently, teachers also had to learn. So we learned with the children, and in that same way, you'll be able to also learn with your children. Follow their interests and look things up together. That makes it all the more fun for them to know that you're also engaged and you're really interested in their learning. Lastly, this is a really difficult time. All of you are doing fantastically well to be able to work from home and also to teach your children. So the primary thing to think about is your well-being and your children's well-being. So do what you can do what you find enjoyable. Don't try and do too much, and just, you know, be mindful that it's a difficult time for everybody. So don't think that you have to do everything that they would be doing at school and doing all the subjects in a day. Do what you can and make it manageable. Okay, thank you, Jalal. Next slide.
So I believe I can maybe perhaps ask Jenna to step in and you know, give a bit of perspective on different areas of STEM, please.
Yeah, limited everybody. So I'm just going to talk about the different areas of STEM today, and I just want to go back on what Taslima said, that a lot of you probably don't realize that you're doing a lot of STEM teaching yourself on a day-to-day basis with your children and in your everyday lives, and you're doing it without realizing. So this is just a little bit of a breakdown for you to see some of the ways that we can explain the different areas and the different ways that you can do activities at home with your child. So science is the way we think about the world around us. So we do this by observing, experimenting. We make predictions about how things work, and we use questioning to further our knowledge. For technology, technology is often a term used to describe the use of an electronic device such as a tablet or a smartphone. However, in this instance, it's also using tools to identify how things work. So it's not necessarily an electronic device when we're talking about technology. Engineering is using a variety of materials to solve problems and building things that work. Maths, we can split into two different sections. So maths, there's number and there's shape, space, and measures. So this includes patterning, sequencing, the exploration of shapes, looking at volume and capacity, looking at weight of different objects, and also comparing objects by size. Next slide, please. So we just wanted to talk about what STEM looks like in the early years, and Taslim will also be talking about what it looks like in the primary years. And we're going to talk about this in different areas. We've put some pictures for you to see some examples of activities that can be done. I know a lot of people wanted to know about activities that they can do at home. And I know right now in the current situation, it's quite difficult to source resources. So a lot of the activities mentioned and a lot of the things you will see can either be done by making things at home or with stuff that you already have in your house. So in science, science is split up into three different categories. So first we talk about Earth and space science. So that's learning about the Earth, the oceans, outer space. We have the different planets. We also have the Earth, the world, how it's formed with the different parts of the ocean, the land, the sea, and things like that. Dustin, if you want to add to this.
Yeah, sure. So I would like to just add that one of the resources I'll be talking about later on has got the STEM.org website, has the astronaut Tim Peake talking about space and life in a space station, which would be really interesting for lots of children. You can do simple experiments where you put a stick into the ground and observe the shadow, measure the shadow, see how it changes through the day. So go out every hour and measure the shadow and see how is the shadow changing. When is it the longest? When is it the shortest? And what does that tell us? And then that links into so much learning about how a shadow is formed. And you can also be very creative with this as well. You can create shadow puppets and make a shadow theatre at home. You can write a play script for your shadow puppets and include other areas of learning and make your learning cross-curricular. There's so much you can do at home with very little resource. Thanks, Jenna.
So for life sciences, we're discussing the the study of living things. So we're essentially talking about plants, animals, and different life cycles. So that could be the life cycle of a chicken and an egg. One of the nice examples for younger children is the story of the very hungry caterpillar, and you can discuss the life cycle of a butterfly. A lot of the resources that are available for this, when we get to the resource section, you will be able to see it, and they're all free to be able to be printed online. That's it.
Okay, so in the resource section, there's a link for Connie Huck, and she does live teaching of science lessons. The BBC Bite Size also has science lessons available on there as well. But at home, you can, this of course links very easily to habitats, to food webs, and you can explore conservation as well through this. Habitats links to, you know, the lack of habitats or the shortages or the felling of trees and things like that. So it all really nicely links together. That again, you can link to how can we help the environment, you know, how can we look after our world. You could grow your own vegetables in your garden. It's very easy to do. You could, you know, my family has started to grow garlic and carrots and spring onions, and those things are really, really easily done, and children will find that process of looking after plants and growing things very valuable in their learning. Thank you.
So for the physical sciences, this is observing natural forces and substances. So one of the nice activities that we've done at home is very simple. It's baking soda, vinegar, and you don't need food coloring. If you have it, it's nice to see the different colors, but you don't actually need it. And it's about seeing the chemical reaction of those items. So there's lots of activities that you can do that we're going to talk about a little bit further that you can do at home for physical sciences. You're going to see one also about changing different colors of Skittles later. That's it.
Just to add to that, so similarly, the baking soda and vinegar, if you mix that in a bottle, put the two together in a bottle, and if you put a balloon on the end of the bottle, and before you start this experiment, ask the child, you know, what do you think is going to happen before you begin, make a prediction, and then mix the two ingredients in the bottle, and you'll see that the balloon will start to inflate. Children love this, they find it fascinating. But then talk about, okay, what do you think is happening? Why is the balloon inflating? Leading on to talking about gases. And then there was a question that somebody had asked about gifted and talented children. Well, this is perfect. STEM is perfect for children who are very talented in science or maths, because it's unlimited. You can go from one thing to the next, and your learning will continue to grow. So making a project about gases and their uses, and you know, solids, liquids, gases, all of that, doing research, making a presentation to share with the family, making a presentation to share online with your grandparents or something like that would be wonderful. And it involves everyone in the learning. Thanks, Jenna.
Thanks. Thank you. So technology. Technology in STEM, other than the typical electronic devices, it's more about using tools. So this is for developing fine and gross motor skills. Scissor skills are very important for children to have. And I know, being a parent myself, it took me a while to actually let my son use scissors. But there are safe ways of using scissors. Just make sure you supervise them when they are using them, especially at a young age. Some of the things you can do is draw different lines on paper and have them try and cut along those lines. Another activity is you can fill a bucket with water. In your kitchen, I'm sure you have different sized jugs, containers, and the whole pouring, emptying, filling aspect of it will really help their motor skills. Using a spade to shovel wet and dry materials. So you can go outside in your garden if you have one And if you don't have a garden, then you can simply make sand using flour and a bit of oil. And depending on how much oil you use in the flour, it will see if it's quite sticky or quite hard. And this is also a nice way to mimic being at the beach, where we can't go right now, but we can build different things with that sand. And the children will very quickly learn that if the sand is quite dry, they're not going to be able to build as well as if the sand was a little bit more wet. So that problem solving factor into it as well. Also just using a magnifying glass to observe leaves, bugs, different things in nature. I think it's important when we're talking about science to ensure that we don't instill a fear that we might have of certain bugs and certain things in nature into our children, because they naturally like to explore, and therefore they should be given the opportunity to explore without having those fears that we might have, you know, about spiders and different types of bugs. Tasneem?
Just to add to that, for primary age children, as I mentioned previously, coding is now part of the curriculum for primary children. I know the Aga Khan Education Board is planning to do something around coding in the future, but we've included some links at the end of the PowerPoint, which will be shared with everybody. And there are free coding tutorials available for children and for parents to work through with children. And they teach you step by step, stage by stage, how to do coding, how to build a scene, how to play a game. And they start from the very basic, how to create a sprite, to quite complex things, which you would be very impressed with what the children manage to achieve when they're, you know, given the kind of basics. Also, design and technology also includes using imagination and creativity to create a product, an imaginary product, designing an advert for the product, building a prototype of the product, and use that language as well. Use a prototype, use the correct language to teach the children, and maybe then even creating a TV advert to sell their product. Persuasive language and reasoning, you know, why should somebody buy this product? Why is it better than what exists already? This again is cross-curricular and it's all part of STEM learning. Thanks, Jenna.
So for engineering, some of the things that we can do is you could build a city out of blocks. So you can use different Lego, Duplo, things like that, depending on your child's age. You can also design a tunnel, and you can get a few different size cars that you might have at home, and you can work out what size does the tunnel need to be for this size car to fit. How can we change the size of the tunnel to make another car fit? So we already talked about the sandcastle, and engineering and technology in terms of doing has a lot of similar aspects as well. Use a variety of recyclable materials at home. Children love junk modeling. So, you know, in your kitchen, before you put boxes, empty cereal boxes into the recycling, save them. Save your kitchen rolls, save empty water bottles, and use them. And sometimes just putting those objects on the table with some glue or tape and just letting them use their imagination is enough for them to be able to create different objects. Tasneem?
So again, using junk modeling as well for primary children. They love it. Even children in primary, even 11-year-olds, they love junk modeling, and they create some fabulous things with junk modeling. So like Jenna said, keep all your kitchen rolls and cereal boxes and everything. But using junk modeling to do STEM challenges. So for example, how can you create a system to protect a raw egg from breaking? How high can you drop the egg from? Now do this in the garden so you don't mess up the house, but how high can you drop it from? Which materials work best to try and protect this egg from breaking? There are so many challenges like this, which children, as you can imagine, they totally love doing this. And further on in the presentation, I'm sharing some STEM cards that you'll see, which give you these challenges. Another popular one is to create a bridge and to see what materials you need to make the bridge so that you can hold a can of beans, for example, or the heaviest thing you can hold on your bridge. Which material works best, which material doesn't work best. All of this is STEM thinking. Thank you.
So for maths, maths has so many different aspects, but these are just some examples. So sorting objects into different categories, such as size, color, or shape. So on the age of your child, you can be able to do this, distinguish this for them. So for example, if your child is very young and they're just learning about shapes, then you can sort things by shape. If they're even younger, maybe like a year old, and you're talking about color, have them do little scavenger hunts around the house where they run around and they look for something that's blue, something that's green. And then you can move on to the shapes where, oh, what's a triangle? Can you bring me something that's a square? Things like that. Number or color patterns are good. Patterning is a really good skill for children. So something like you can see in the pictures where you just use beads, make different color patterns, start with 2 color patterns, and then you can move on to 3 color patterns. Measuring using different units of measure, such as cubes. So you can see in the picture the dinosaurs. So when you're comparing height or length, you can talk about which one's bigger, which one's smaller, the longest, the shortest, and you can use things like cubes to do that. If you don't have cubes at home, you can use anything. You can use Cheerios, you can use how many raisins tall is it? It doesn't really matter as long as you're using the same unit for all of them. And then you can just compare the different sizes. Another good maths activity at home, which you don't need anything, is have your child help you set the table. So, you know, work out how many people are in the family, how many forks, how many knives, how many spoons, plates, things that you need. Also a good way to get your child to help. And they can also work out these different maths multiples too. Let's see.
So maths in the primary, it's again, like Jenna said, there are different aspects to it, but the most difficult for children is problem solving, and that's the one that is STEM related. So puzzles to do with numbers, Sudoku, any kind of mathematical reasoning. For example, the next shape in a sequence of shapes, you can do also with older children, but the next number in a sequence of numbers, finding the rule and then applying that rule, all of that is mathematical STEM thinking. Logic problems and puzzles, there are lots of those available on the STEM.org site, which we've shared later on. And puzzles where you have to find all the possibilities, where the child has to work systematically. For example, there's a red t-shirt, green t-shirt, blue t-shirt, and there is a red pair of shorts, green pair of shorts, blue pair of shorts. How many different combinations can you find? In that process, children need to be taught, but they learn how to think systematically and to work through an order in an orderly way, which is obviously a really valuable skill for them. Also, lastly, there's a website called Enrich, which has amazing challenges for children, and again, for any child that's particularly gifted, this site's got amazing challenges that even adults would find difficult to do, but it also has answers. So there you go. Okay. So now I'm going to go through some resources to support you at home. The first one, we've had lots of questions about resources, so I've picked a few that I think that are particularly good. There is a large number, there's a wealth of resources out there. Don't feel overwhelmed, just explore maybe a couple at a time and see what you find is user-friendly for you. But this first one, wonderopolis.org, it poses a question every day. For example, what is an ice quake? So you would ask your child, you would encourage enthusiasm and excitement. Oh, have you ever heard of an ice quake? I've never heard of one. What do you think it is? Where in the world could we find them? What do you think might cause them? What does it sound like? Could it be like an earthquake? I don't know. Let's have a look. And then the site, when you click into it, it provides you with further resources. So you've got explanations, you've got videos, you've got all kinds of things to help you with your understanding. And they also have a wonder wall, a wonder wall of words, which links to that question. So it gives you amazing vocabulary, which will be great for the child. You put it up on your fridge, put it up around your house, use that vocabulary in their sentences. They need at least 10 experiences of using the language before it becomes part of their vocabulary. So you have to keep encouraging them to use the words they've never heard of before. So again, it's cross-curricular. And then there's a quiz on there as well. So it tests the child's understanding of that subject once you've had a real good play and thought about it together. So it's all good fun. The next site, Twinkle, this is something that teachers use a lot, and it has a wealth of knowledge on there and a wealth of material on there. It's got all the subjects, and it goes all the way through the primary age group, all the way from reception up to year 6. And there are PowerPoints on there. There are things you can print out to play games on, loop cards, all kinds of different exciting things. So I recommend that you have a look. There are also the STEM challenge cards, which I spoke earlier about. Each one is a different one, and they're all lots of fun with things you would have at home, easily accessible to you. Thanks, Jalal. Can I have the next slide? Okay, so STEM.org. This is a brilliant site for STEM. It's the largest provider of education and career support in STEM subjects. They have primary resources for home learning, especially for parents. Again, I've put an image up there of some of their STEM questions and starter activities. So they're called Starters for STEM activity cards, and they provide a brilliant starting point. But the links at the bottom, when you go online, they lead you into further printable resources and an explanation and the opportunity to explore that topic further. This site also has free coding tutorials, which are aimed at girls and boys. They're sort of themed. So there's a Moana one, there's a Frozen one, there's all kinds of things that girls would enjoy doing and participating as well as boys. And then there are lovely video clips of short STEM experiments that you can do at home. There's demonstrations on there. So the volcano one, the balloon one that I spoke about before, all of that is on this website. There's also a little video of making ice cream at home, which is really great fun. And you can talk about reversible changes and irreversible changes through that process. The other one, Little Bins for Little Hands. Again, this has demonstrations of easy STEM experiments, and there are videos on there, and these items would all be available in the home as well. And as these images show, there are free science packs and STEM activity guides and all kinds of really interesting and fun things that are easy to find. So I would suggest having a really good look on there as well. Next slide, please, Jalal. So this slide is about toys, engineering toys. Some of these you might already have at home. I'm sure that many people will have Lego at home, but things like Connect and Meccano are specially tailored towards engineering. So Connect comes with guides, teachers' guides, and lesson plans when you buy the kits. So if at any point, it's good to know about these. If you don't have them at home, don't worry, don't buy them specially. But in the future, if you see that your child is really interested in engineering and you want to support their interest, then this is a really good a toy to invest in for them. But if you haven't got these things at home, then Lego is really great, and so is junk modeling. So with Lego, you might look at different structures around the world, take some pictures, print off some pictures, and make a scrapbook, and then let your child make a replica of that model, take a picture of their replica to put into the scrapbook. Work with the child to create a profile page of the structure, any interesting facts you can find, and together create a really amazing book that you can share with the family. So there are so many fun things you can do together, and all of that is sparking an interest and a curiosity within STEM subjects. Thanks, Jalal.
Thank you very much, both of you. And I believe this concludes the presentation part of the webinar. We will move on to questions. And these are questions that we have received as part of your registration, what I mentioned previously. And these have been collated, and we'll basically, the presentation as well as now moving on to the questions were geared towards what we received input from all of you. So let's basically start with the first question of the day that we have here. A question goes like this: I don't have science equipment at home. What do I do? What practical activities can we do with things that are easily available at home? And I perhaps let's start in, let me invite the first panelist, Jenna, to see what's her perspective on that.
So we did talk about a lot of the activities that we can do at home, but we've put together some additional ones. Can I have the next slide, please?
Sure. Can you see it? Okay, I believe there's probably a link, the internet connection issue. Maybe perhaps, Jenna, are you back?
It's fine, I can see it.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, I can see it.
No, your screen was frozen for a second.
That's okay. So the activity at the top you can see, if you look at the picture, is just putting paper and colored pencils by your door or a window. And you can just choose any toys that you have at home. And if you can see the shadows that are being caused by the light outside, and then use the colored pencils to trace over the shadows. So that's a quite nice activity to lead into a conversation about shadows and how they work with different lights. The other one is really fun too. It's putting Skittles. It also works with colored M&Ms, and you put them in a circle on a plate, and just in the middle you have your child pour some warm water in the plate, and then you just watch the rainbow form. You can put them in a circle, you can put them into different shapes, and you can experiment with the different combinations of colors. Next slide, please. So these are some of the maths activities, again, with a lot of stuff you have at home. So the first one, this one is for children that are a little bit older, probably about going into reception, but you can very easily simplify this. So if you have a child who's about maybe 2, you can start off by putting the spaghetti onto the Play-Doh. You can use any type of dough that you have at home, and it's just Cheerios, and it's about using their fine motor skills to put the Cheerios on the spaghetti. And then you can extend this activity for children that are a bit older by doing addition number sentences, which is what you see. You can even do subtraction number sentences or anything like that. The next picture you see is making shapes, and it's just about using cotton buds to make the shapes. And you can, a nice way to extend this activity is for the little ones, they can make 2D shapes. You can use cotton buds, or you can use toothpicks, but toothpicks are a little bit sharp, so just be aware of how old your children are. A nice way to extend this is you can actually use the same things, add some Play-Doh, and build it into 3D shapes for children who are a little bit older. Thank you.
Wow, thank you. These are some exciting ideas. Tasleen, do you have anything further to add to this?
I think I mentioned it earlier about using the junk modeling to do some of the challenges, like creating the tallest tower, creating a bridge that can hold a heavy object. All of these things would be done with materials you have lying around at home, and you wouldn't need to buy anything for that. So it's about being creative, and if you use the resources we've provided here today and then be creative, I think you've got lots there to be able to do that at home. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Okay, moving on to the second question. And question is, can you recommend TV programs, online streaming services, or online resources and apps that will help with STEM learning? And I guess once again, maybe because of the specialty in early learnings, maybe we can start with Jenna once again.
So for this one, there are lots of TV programs that you can watch. There's lots of streaming services. Also apps. Dustin's going to talk about some of these things. One of them that I really like for the younger ones is the BBC Bite Size. The nice thing about this one is that it's separated into different key stages. There's lessons on there, and there's also activities that go with the lessons. So it's quite a nice one, and it's broken down into the different areas. Dustin, do you want to add?
Yeah, sure. So Jalal, if you move to the next.
You have a slide for this, yes.
Yeah, please, thank you.
Sure.
So the Department for Education have recently released resources for home education, which is the first link that's on this slide. And they provide a whole host of free resources that are invaluable at this time when everybody's at home, and they're also approved and come from highly reputable sources. So that would be the first port of call, really. And then I've included some other sites on here which I've used in the past with children, and they're really interesting, and if you explore them, you'll find that actually there's so much on there. But again, be careful not to be overwhelmed. At the bottom here, there's curriculum mapped video resources. So BBC are teaching live sessions. So there are live lessons on there, which you can access for the children to learn at home with. And the Oak Academy, I haven't put that one on there, but the Oak Academy are also giving live lessons as well at the moment, free of charge. So you can access maths lessons and science lessons free of charge on there, which is really useful at this time. I think Farzana wanted to add something here.
Yeah, thank you very much, Tasleen. And I think Farzana, I believe, yeah, please go ahead, yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, so I just wanted to, from the board's perspective, just give you a little bit of an idea of some of the resources that we're putting on the Headstart website. You can see one of the links in front of you. This is the Learning at Home section, where we have a number of resources and links to webinars that we've run previously. But in that section, we've actually also developed a STEM Learning at Home document, where we realize that a lot of parents are sort of being overwhelmed with lots of resources being thrown at them. What we've tried to do is to just handpick some of these that either people have recommended to us or we've had experience with ourselves, and just sort of categorize them a little bit, giving you a little bit of an idea of what age groups they're suitable for as well. So I would definitely encourage you to go to that website, and in particular look at the STEM document. And certainly some of the resources that you're seeing on this in this presentation as well, we'll be adding to that document, and we'll also send all of these out to you as well after the webinar. Thanks, Jalal.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to the questions. Let's go with the next question here. How can we support our children's interest and build their confidence. Let's start with Taslim on this.
Okay, so anything that you show an interest in, your child will naturally be interested in further. So you showing an interest in what they're learning about, asking them questions about what they're learning, giving them time to spend with you, and this is a perfect opportunity for that, where you can learn together and you can share together the things that they are learning at school, or that is the work that's being set for them from their teachers at school. Ask them questions, engage in it with them. They're probably able to teach you quite a bit if you let them. So encourage them also to ask questions, encourage them to find answers. Why is the sky blue? How do aeroplanes fly? You know, ask questions, look for answers together. If you have female children, if you've got girls at home, whatever they show an interest in, allow them to explore. So let them play with non-traditional toys and grow their experience and their interest in whichever areas they want to. Provide them with lots of praise. That will be very supportive for them. But try, if you can, to make that praise specific. So tell them exactly what it is that they've done well. I'm really proud of you because I really loved the way you did such and such. Well done for trying to do such and such. Well done for not giving up. You know, all of these things, but be very specific. In terms of confidence, start with things that are manageable and achievable for the child. So give them a challenge which you think, okay, it's slightly challenging, but they should be able to get there. This experience of success will give them great confidence and pride in what they've done. And then you can lead them on to maybe more challenging things, experiences of things that maybe they have to think a bit longer for or try a bit harder for. So although I'm saying allow them to experience success, it's also really important that you allow them to experience struggle and also sometimes failure as well. That's really important because children need to build resilience. They need to learn that everything doesn't always come the first time and you have to keep trying and persevere. Perseverance is really important. Encouraging them to build a growth mindset is invaluable. So a growth mindset, now this is a big area in education at the moment, and we could have a whole webinar on this one thing, but just a brief synopsis of it. Growth mindset is all about allowing children to learn that if they're not good at something now, it doesn't mean that they will never be good at it, that our mind is a muscle, and the more we exercise our mind, the more that we can learn. So trying new activities, trying things that they've never tried before, be it knitting, sewing, cookery, anything, builds different pathways in the brain and it develops new skills. So teaching them that failing at something is actually fine, it's okay, it's how you deal with that. What are you going to do differently next time? How are you going to change it next time? Which part of it do you think wasn't great? And how can we modify things? So all of that conversation is really important with children. So don't try and protect them from failing, let them fail, but support them and let them build on it. I hope that answers that question.
Can I jump in very quickly on that? I just want to also reassure people that, you know, I myself am a scientist and we don't get things right first time. So we shouldn't expect our children to get their scientific experiments and things right first time. So that whole process of exploration is what also helps to build them. And the other bit of reassurance that I do want to kind of provide is that it's also okay for parents not to know the answer. Sometimes we have this feeling that we should know the answer to everything that our children ask us, but that's okay for you not to know, and that you can actually go through an exploratory period with them to try and get to try and actually get to the answer.
Thank you, Farzana. That was a good perspective. Thank you. Okay, moving on to next. Can you suggest what equipment and activities can be used to help with learning about human bodies? What home resourced experiments can be done that relate to biology and medicine? Perhaps, Jenna, you can highlight something here?
So for this one, so I'm
You
gonna
have a
first,
slide for this?
yes.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
So I'm gonna first talk about from a young age, and it's really simple things like singing head, shoulders, knees, and toes, different songs about the body. It's about, you know, 5 little speckled frogs, where you use your fingers and you practice, like, you know, putting each finger down when you're counting down the different frogs, things like that, where they use the different parts of their body and see how the different parts of their body works. There's so many physical exercises that children do, throwing, so we need to make sure that we give them all those opportunities. And sometimes I think we don't realize that we are teaching them these things without specifically saying, okay, we're learning about the human body. When you're playing throwing and catching with your child from a very young age, you can talk about, oh, you know, when I throw something, how can I make it go any further? What can we do to, should we throw it over? Should we throw it under? Things like that. One of the activities you can see here is you can have your child lie down on a big piece of paper, trace their body, and have them help you measure the different body parts. There's so many different aspects of learning in this activity. So, you know, you've incorporated the literacy because you're going into labeling. If they're too young to label, you can still talk about the different words. You can turn this into a maths activity too, where you can measure, are my hands bigger than my feet? Are my feet bigger than my hands? How can we measure? We can use non-standard units to be able to do that as well. Taslim will talk about how to extend this a little bit further as your child gets a little bit older.
So using...
You have a slide for this? Yes, go ahead, Justin.
Sorry, Jalal, just go back to the previous one just for a minute, please. Thank you. So when you're labeling, using actual scientific terminology to label for the for older children, locating the different organs within the body, put pictures of the different organs, pin them up onto the body so the children get an idea of where everything is in the body. Another example is perhaps creating, on those organs even, creating little flaps with a description of what each body part does and what their function is. So making this one activity extend to all the way up to Key Stage 2 and to Year 6 is possible. Jalal, will you please move on to the next slide?
Sure.
For me? Thank you. Another way to learn about the human body is to play snap with body part names and images. Also extend this to the functions of the body part and their name. So you're playing snap like you know with regular snap, and the child has to say what you've got a description of the function, and the child has to tell you the name of that organ, or you have the name of the organ, and if you get the organ's name and the description has to match up. You know how to play snap, I'm sure. Bingo, bingo, but adapting bingo to play it with parts of the body and even the functions of the body. Pelmanism is the name of a matching game, which I've included in an image there just so it's easier to see what it is. It's when you turn over 2 cards, and if you get the same matching cards, then you win a point. So you would have the names of the body and the description of their function, and if you get the function and the name, then you get a point. So it's different ways of learning the functions and the names. And Kim's game, it refers to this image with the duck, where you have certain objects and then the child looks at that for a minute or say, and then you take away a couple, and then the child has to tell you what you've taken away. So this is a memory game, but you can play this with body part names and their functions. Now, mnemonics is a very useful way of remembering things and learning things. So, for example, the example here, Mrs. Gren, is a mnemonic for learning the common attributes of all living things. So all living things move, they respire, they have sensitivity, growth, reproduction, excretion, nutrition, and it's these letters that are the start of each of these words. This can be extended to younger children when learning spellings. So learning, for example, the spelling of said, the word said, Sally Ann is dancing, for example, or because big elephants can't always understand small elephants. This is a strategy that can be used for really basic things, but also quite complex things. For example, you can even learn the names of the elements in the periodic table using this strategy. And to demonstrate, Happy Hector likes beans but could not obtain food. And the start of each of those is hydrogen, helium, lithium, beryllium, boron, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, fluorine. So it's a really good way, and research tells us that we remember things better and we remember them for longer when there's meaning attached to them. So that's why this works and is really effective. I've included at the bottom here some practical resources. There's an interactive simulation where you can look at different body parts, you can rotate different body parts. So you don't need to buy a model of the human body, which was a question that we'd had. You can use online resources. We're really lucky now to look at the heart, to rotate the heart, to see all the valves in the heart. And obviously this is great for secondary and A-level standard as well. And then the BBC Bite Size, as Jenna mentioned earlier, it's got a whole vast array of things, and it's broken down into key stages, but it gives you videos to watch, quizzes and games relating to the human body. So it's a great one to have a look at. Thank you, Jalal.
Thank you
the
very
next
much.
slide, please.
Sure.
So just in terms of biology and medicine, obviously this medicine isn't a primary thing, thankfully, but we do have experiments that can be done at home that relate to the body. So for example, the eggshell experiment. This is an experiment where you use an eggshell to represent teeth. Eggshells are made up largely of calcium, and so are our teeth. So we can use the eggshell in place of teeth, and you would place the eggshell, you would wash the eggshell, and then you would place it into different liquids, as this picture shows, Coca-Cola, water. You can try coffee and tea as well, but it will and then you observe it really carefully, which is the science skills that we spoke about earlier. Very careful observation, draw a picture of what you see, observe it maybe after half a day, after one whole day, and then the next day draw 3 different pictures and write down a description of what you see happening. And then you can talk about with the children that the Coca-Cola is particularly harmful to teeth, and that's why we don't like to drink a lot of Coca-Cola, hopefully. Okay. The celery experiment, this is really simple. You mix some water with food coloring and you put some celery stems into the mixture, and you'll see that the liquid travels up the stem of the celery, and it just shows the children that just like in the celery stem in our bodies, blood travels around in blood vessels in a similar way to this. And if you want to particularly focus on the body, then you can, with the children, make up like an obstacle course in the garden or even in your living room, where the child would be the blood and the child would be traveling around the living room, going into the different organs and going through the heart. So you can make this as easy and as complicated as you want, but it's all about using your imagination. I hope that answers that question.
Thank you. I'm sure it does. Thank
If
you.
I can just quickly jump in with that, there's also activities that you can do in the kitchen as well to sort of, as you're cooking, for example, just to really to sort of get talk about how maybe chemical reactions are happening, and some of these might be happening in our bodies, etc. as well. So as you are cooking and doing these kind of activities, that's something that you can talk to children about. I know we have a couple more questions left. However, we have come to the end of our hour. So Jalal, I'm just wondering if it's possible for you to go to the feedback poll slide. What we will do with the questions that haven't been answered is we will address these later on by email. If we can go ahead with the, we'd just like to ask you for a little bit of feedback. And I think that should appear on your screen in a minute. So you should have something appearing which just asks you 2 or 3 questions.
It should be on the screen.
And we're able to give us some feedback on how the presentation, how this webinar has been. That would be fantastic. But just while you're doing that, Jalal, are you able to go back to the AKEB slide, and I can just one slide before the feedback poll. I just want to highlight a couple of STEM activities that we're doing as part of the board. Just very weak in the next couple of days, we will be launching our new coding club, which is for primary age children, for 6 to 11-year-olds. And so for that being advertised in the Al-Sahar, take the kids through a six-session course where they can actually learn some of the basics of programming and coding that they haven't actually, for children that haven't experienced this before. We've got a virtual fair which is encouraging you as parents to actually work with your children on some kind of STEM related activity, whether that's an experiment, that's a research project, anything that comes to mind, and then we would like to have the opportunity to actually showcase that to other members of the Jamaat online. So do email us on this email address that you can see here in front of you. And then finally, we also have a Mission X program that we're doing. It's where children can actually do a bunch of STEM related activities and physical activities to do exactly what it says, train like an astronaut. So that's generally for sort of the 8 to 11-year-old range, but can cover people outside of that range. So if your child might be interested in that, do email us about that too. So Jalal, I'll hand it back over to you. I think we had one more slide to mention about future webinar.
Sure. So while the polls are coming in, I think they are still being collected. I just want to briefly mention about the next webinar that we have. We have our next webinar on phonics and importance of reading. This will be held on May 3rd, which is basically next Sunday, the same usual time between 2 and 3, focusing on early years and key stage 1. This will be delivered by Zara Boyd. And I would say, like, in interest of time, just like, you can see the link here to register yourself. Try and register as latest as next Friday or next Saturday. And I believe, let me see if I can cut and paste this in the chat box, so that way you can register right now immediately, because the registration is open at the moment. Yes, so you can basically go ahead and register for this as the next one. And I believe, Farzana, do you have anything else to add before we conclude? You're muted. You're on mute, Farzana.
Oh, sorry. That's it from me. Thank you very much to everyone. Please do reach out to us if there's anything that we can do to help further activities, or any concerns or questions that you may have, and the board will do their very best to help address those. Thank you very much. And
I just want to say a big thank you to our panelists for giving us this insightful information, where I'm sure I feel like I've learned a lot from what I've gone through here, and I'm sure all the parents will be wondering and wanting to make sure that they can just explore the reach of which the resources which is provided to take their child's development journey forward. So thank you, both of you. Thank you, Jenna, and thank you, Taslim, for your time. So thank you very much for your participation, everybody.